interesting thing is when you're in a room full of people that get it, it's all kind of makes sense. So everybody from what Doug had just said, basically, all that was a part of our story. So you may remember Jordan, my son Jordan, had a heat stroke the very first day of football practice, University of Maryland, 2018, and basically were running gases, and obviously Jordan started to decline around between number 5 and 7 on the actual sprints on gases. And it's interesting, Doug, because you made a very good point, how quick a snap really lasts. And the last time I ever remember a lineman running to a touchdown was, anybody remember the 2000 Ravens Super Bowl game? Kelly Griggs, probably 5'8", 300 plus pounds. I don't even know how he got the ball, and literally Ray Lewis pushed him into the end zone. That's the only time I've seen that done. So we literally went from a healthy kid Tuesday morning, literally to an emergency liver transplant Friday morning. I, as a parent, had no clue on what any type of heat-related injury was. Basically, I just thought if you got heat stroke, using the term loosely, basically you just got overheated. All you had to do was go in the shade, and basically all would be right with the world once you drank some water and cooled down. Interesting thing, had no idea how tragic this type of injury really was. Really didn't know what was going on with my son, so it was a lot of things like rhabdomyolysis and a lot of terms that I'd never even heard before. But one of the things that I kept asking myself while Jordan was in the hospital fighting for those 2 weeks was, what did I miss? Because as a father, taught him how to fight for himself, how to do this, how to do that, how to stand up to his peers and all these things. However, I never told him, if you don't feel comfortable, speak up. If a coach asks you to do something that you don't feel uncomfortable with, don't do it. Or more importantly, listen to your body. You know, that's why I kind of asked Doug earlier in regards to, you can be in the best shape of your life and literally you can still come there hydrated. You can be in the best shape of your life. And again, you got to listen to your body in a sense. So for us, basically in 2018, when we were all together at the Redskins Stadium at the time, this was all new to me. This has been an organic process for us in regards to advocacy. I tell people all the time, I'm parent first, advocate second, educator third. So one of the big things we initially thought it was all about the cold water tub. So our organization donated cold water tubs literally from Alaska to Florida, over 300 plus tubs. But again, kids kept dying. So that 2021, 2021, 19, 20, 21 were some very horrendous years in regards to heat-related injuries and things like that. So then we thought it was like, okay, hey, it's all about legislation. And we started talking, and I kept talking, and I'm like, hey, you know what, coach, you should do this, student athletes, you should do this, but what's going to mandate it, or what's going to make any of it stick? So as we kind of went on, then we thought it was about, even in regards to legislation, the whole legislation process, legislation really don't mean a whole lot if nobody tells you that it's a bill. And that's really the advocacy aspect of that legislation. You have to let people know this bill protects your child, this bill protects your child, this bill protects your child. So therefore, that's what legislation is. Easy to say, we've made it look easy. We've gotten 4 laws passed since Jordan's passed. Literally from the AAU level all the way up to the collegiate level of student athlete safety. However, if you ask anybody beyond our latest House Bill 836, how many people would even know? More popular bills for us in the state of Maryland is the NIL bill and House Bill 836, because it's a room full of people like us that really it has something to do with in regards to student athlete safety. But the real legislation piece comes from letting people know that the bill is in play or these laws are in effect. So if you're not directly affected by this, if we all went out and they just said, hey, you can't make a right on red anymore, how many of us would really know unless we start getting tickets and it was like, wait a minute, that's a bill. Doug and I have conversations sometimes related to what's going on nationally, and I'm asking like, wait a minute, that's a bill? That can actually happen in regards to some coaches in Georgia recently? One of the questions I asked. But one of the main things when it comes to advocacy, in a sense, one of the things for us was, I always told people as a parent, I always ask 2 questions. 2 questions, basically, any of us that have student athletes? Anybody? What do we usually ask?
Several things.
Well, you may, because you're in the field, but the average person, because we usually ask, can they play and why aren't they playing? I didn't know the list of laundry questions just to ask prior to, hey, you can go over to this school, or you can play for this program, or you can play with this team. I didn't think to ask, do you have an emergency action plan? Is anybody CPR certified? Do you have an AED machine? Do you have any type of safety equipment? As parents, we ask 2 questions. Can they play and why aren't they playing? And we just kind of assume the rest that whoever the organization that they're playing for already knows what's going on, or they have all their systems in place. And unfortunately, We were at a Big Ten school, and unfortunately, clearly, I wouldn't be standing here if they did have everything in place. So those were the questions that we really try to educate people to ask, even when we do our sports clinics and things like that. Okay, great. Even when we have our sports clinics and things like that, I remember taking Jordan to combines. You name it, every combine, football combine I could take him to, I took him to. Under Armour, Nike, Adidas. What did I do? I sat in the stands with every other parent, wondering in the event of what would they do, and hoping, because nobody ever pointed anything out for us. So one of the things that we started on was, whenever we do an event, we do parent education. Because what I really feel as though, as a parent, as a father, when Jordan passed, it was my fault, because it was something I didn't teach him. But I think that when they're at that age, at the collegiate level, they've already drinking a lot of the Kool-Aid. So we have a medical advisory board too, and we had a really interesting meeting. And Doug, you made a good point, because at the collegiate level, they already expect you to come in and practice conditioned already. You shouldn't even be out of shape, because they already expect that. And I remember while Jordan was being recruited a couple days prior to recruit day, coaches were at our kitchen table, and I asked two questions. Can he get some playing time? And I asked something about mental health and substance abuse, because I had a facility at that time. That was it. And I remember the coach specifically saying, if you come to camp conditioned, you can apply for a job. So they already expect that at that level. But when you start teaching self-advocacy and you start planting the seeds of self-advocacy, that starts right here. That's where it starts. And I know a lot of us are secondary school educators and things like that, but when you're talking to parents and things like that, this is where you have to plant these seeds here. And you gotta teach them to advocate for themselves, or speak up for themselves, listen to your bodies. Now, it's our job to come in and hone on it when they get to middle school, especially high school, because now you can speak up for yourself. But if we miss that window of opportunity, guess what? By the time they get to college, if coach says run through that brick wall, they won't run through that brick wall. Just because I'm trying to get to the next level. And I'm gonna do everything I gotta do to get to that next level. They've already bought into, average kids and board already trying to get to the next level, and I'm gonna do what I gotta do to get there. But self-advocacy and parent advocacy starts at a very, very early age. Now, Jen been with us when we talked to bleachers full of parents in some of our clinics. So again, these are things that are very significant. So as we kind of went on throughout the whole process, we thought it was about cold water tubs. We thought it was about just speaking to people. We thought it was about legislation, and I think I'm missing something else. But one of the things that when we got to the legislative process, now these are the things that stick. I think for us, the NIL bill was significant in regards to the collegiate athlete. We're not concerned about them getting paid. We were more concerned about our notable provision. State of Maryland's notable provision was the health and wellness of a player. Guess what? We're not worried about you getting paid, but guess what? We're not going to let, in the state of Maryland, you can't get forced to play, and you can't return to play prior to you're ready to return. Or you won't have a loss of a scholarship in the event that you can't play and things like that. So that was our notable provision. It varied from state to state to state, tried to take it in front of Congress and create a baseline standard that would be consistent all the way across the board in all 52 states. But if legislation was that easy, you know, politics and legislative attempts turns your optimism into realism extremely fast. Extremely fast. Because again, we know it's the right thing, and this makes sense and all these things, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of, it's a lot harder than it really looks. So for us, the biggest thing that we're proud of this most recent bill, which is House Bill 836, basically what it mandates is the EAP is practiced twice a year, at the beginning of every fall season, at the beginning of every spring and every fall season. So what does that do? It keeps everybody, and the main goal for us really was to focus on the schools that didn't have the resources. Thanks to the KSI Institute, basically you all always let us know what percentage of schools have resources that can afford an athletic trainer. Is it like 20,000 high schools in the United States?
21,000.
21,000? Cool. Half have resources, and more than half or less than half?
Well, more than a quarter don't even have athletic training.
See my point? Right,
Yeah.
right.
34% don't have athletic
Right, and that was one of the things that we want to do in Maryland, like, let's focus on those schools. We're not worried about the schools that can afford the athletic training, but what about the public schools that don't have these? What can we do to arm them? So we're looking at some type of risk management or some type of, hey, let's put them in a better position. Because I tell people all the time from an advocate's perspective, especially coaches, anything happened to somebody's child on your watch, automatically, you didn't even have to be on the field, but it's your fault. So the better educated that all of us are, especially the ones that don't have these resources, hopefully the safer our kids will be.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
When you said that they don't have, I look at DCPS, they have 14 trainers, but they have numerous sports. And then I cross the line, because I coach at Sarasky, PT County is the worst. That has no athletic trainers in a major facility. Right across the line from where we are, they don't have it. So how can they get the resources they need to get those still and bring that conversation up to the administration of PT County?
Well, the good thing is the state of Maryland, so it's a state law. So the good thing, and this is the thing, and this is the interesting thing, especially in these spaces, right? You see it from all sides. So I had an interesting conversation last night at dinner with
Colin.
Tina, right? Tina and another athletic trainer. It totally looks different in regards to incidents or tragedies from everybody's perspective. It looks different from their perspective. It looks different from the student athlete's perspective. It looks different from a parent's perspective. Because we all want to kind of know what happened. At the end of the day, athletic trainers always think no matter what happened, whether it went, especially a tragedy, you always felt as though it was something that, what I kind of got from you last night was it was always something that I could have done better. But sometimes you can do all you can do, and still, it may, once it leaves your hands, I mean, I feel like, yeah, sometimes a higher power's play is always at play, and a lot of us don't really want to be, none of us would be willing participants in something not going right in a sense, even after we've done everything that you could possibly do. So again, that's just kind of like, it just depends on what your process or what your thought process. But in regards to your question, it's a state law. So not only does House Bill 836 protect, but it kind of keeps everybody accountable as well. So that's the main thing where this training is mandatory. This isn't just a municipality bill or a PG County or Baltimore City. No, this is a state law. And that was really the main goal of going at the state with this because, again, this is something that we were thinking about PG counties. We were thinking about inner city schools or schools that basically resourceless in a sense. So that's the main goal. It's a state law, so of course they gotta adhere to it. Does that answer the question?
It answers my question, but I know it's an issue, and I heard you. And
Was that the politically correct answer?
Well, that might be.
Okay, let me, you want the real answer?
That might be the politically correct answer, but whether the politically correct answer is right, I hear what you're saying, but to see the reality is not being enforced.
So the non-politically correct answer is money, and prioritizing. So there's money. There's money, it's just where are you spending it? Is it more important to have t-shirts and socks that match, or new uniforms every year, or, you know, all your staff has matching clothing? Or is it more important to have the resources that you need? Whether that be human capital, or that be these things that we need. And so, you know, that's the issue. Where's your priority?
And so the advocacy part of me says,
Yeah.
we fight to have a school system that's inclusive.
Yeah.
When we say DC public schools, but now the council says all schools fall under DCPS, whether they're charter or public. But if you go to the charter school side, they don't get the resources that they need to provide. Like Fisher might have a great athletic training, but how many other schools in the charter school system have the resources to have athletic trainers? But we have a council that says all schools are equal in the District of Columbia. So I'm going to what he just said. You
Well,
put together a bill,
Right,
but then when you go look at them on Fridays and Saturdays,
yeah.
you don't see it.
So Margaret, I'm gonna say too, part of that is, for example, DCPS, we've been for 32 years and it functioned with, knock on wood, no catastrophic or injuries or deaths. So does, Chancellor Fairby even know we exist? Does DC Council even know we exist? Do they know that we are there to be under-resourced? Probably not. And so that's something else too, and that's kind of been Jamila and Tina, my focus since we started this back in like 2012, is letting people know we're here and we need help.
Right. Ms. Montgomery.
I just so we are putting things in perspective.
perspective. So the House bill is about emergency action plans and practicing of those emergency action plans and access to, defibrillators and things like that. The House bill does not mandate athletic trainers. So I want to be I don't want anyone to go back and because our office would be the one getting a billion phone calls and shots fired. Like, oh no, this bill says no, that's not what the bill says. So one, in terms of the bill and legislation, yes, making sure your EAPs are in place, making sure they are practiced, making sure they are accessible. In terms of athletic trainers, which is what Baltimore City is currently going through, and we are super appreciative to KSI for the support, and not even just financial support, but just the resources and support of being able to have professionals to work with us. We are working, and I know PG County is working as well, because those are also our counterparts, to get athletic trainers. So we have been working with MedStar, Hopkins, places that don't even have athletic trainers to try to offer that, and have that resource in our schools. So there has been a lot of investment and capital put into it. They are grossly underpaid. Everybody's grossly underpaid probably in this room. But please I'm gonna encourage you to work with your athletic director and your leadership to find out what is being put in place, because I don't want people to think like, oh, we just don't have it. It might not be the case, so it may be something where you can help advocate, because trust me, we need coaches to go out there to spread out, like, hey, look, in the meantime, while they're working on athletic trainers, I need you to make sure that you are prepared and you're able to act. You have your cold tubs, you have your tarps, you have, things that are available to you. So don't think we're not working on trainers. We are.
No,
But
absolutely, we know that, and that's why the focus of these meetings isn't just on athletic training services,
Right.
because at the end of the day, we just want the kids to go home safe.
exactly.
And so, if I can't be there, I wanna make sure you have what you need to do the best you can do, yeah. Like, we don't expect you to do rectal thermometry, you're not a
Yeah, they
trained
gave us
professional.
those, and I was like, oh, hell no.
Right, you're not a medical professional, so that doesn't fall under your purview. But a lot of school systems won't let their athletic trainers use them because they're minors. But it's best practices, it's a medical, whatever, and so like DCPS didn't balk at that, and so,
That's not my
Yeah.
industry, I just know that when they
Right,
gave us those,
right.
I said, I'm not.
Right, no.
But I'm gonna let y'all fight that battle, but I
Right.
do want to.
And I do threaten my kids, I'm like, let's not ever get to that point.
And let me go back to that, and thanks for the extra information. And even when you talk about coaches, right? One of the big things is we do a lot of football clinics. So, and when we initially started, we were basically very football centric in a sense. Came over, Jen got me in quite a few schools in DC, and we would just talk about football programs, because again, it was a football injury, my son was a football player. And then pre-COVID, right before COVID really kicked in, I was more in the speaking trail down, like throughout, like in the Orlando, Apopka, Tampa area. And what I started to notice was the crowds got bigger when we said, bring all your student athletes in. Everybody, if you're a student athlete, come in, because now we're talking a whole lot of student athlete self-advocacy and things like that. So the crowds got gigantic. You got hundreds of kids as opposed to just a football team in a sense. But even with coaches, we chase a lot of football clinics throughout the winter, and everybody deflects. We manufacture our own cold water tub. It's called the Cool First Transport Second Soda One Team Tub. And Jen and I kind of went back with it, and it was just like, what is the school taking off site with them in regards to safety equipment, as opposed to just who's covering the Rubbermaid is great, stationary, but who can take that with them everywhere? So at least you have something. So back to what Doug said, I learned from Doug was, what are your 5 modalities of cooling a person down in a sense? These are things, I don't have a medical degree at this point. I get the information from the subject matter experts. Then we looked up and worked to Falmouth race, and now our practical experience really went to a whole nother level as well, because now we can see what it looks like, what the signs and symptoms are, how to assess the whole nine. I'm not inserting a rectal thermometer in anybody's butt in a sense, but still, and that day, the butt joke just kept going further and further that day, right? Who was that? That was Dr. Jardine doing that? Yeah, the butt joke just went far. So I'm not inserting that, but again, we know what it looks like. And then even when you look at the different modalities of cooling a person down, what if you're not in the water? If you don't have a water source, do you have towels? Do you have ice? Because keep in mind, the way I look at this is from an advocacy perspective. We talk to people at all levels. Collegiate, high school, middle school, AAU. You got the NCAA at the collegiate level. You usually got some type of high school associations at the high school, middle school level. And then when you get to that, I just want to be a coach, and the AAU level, it's like the Wild Wild West. Everybody and their mama think they can coach, and luckily I applaud those municipalities where we got laws passed that have parks and recreation facilities where you got to get trained on all of the safety equipment and measures and things like that to use to practice on their facilities or to compete on their facilities. But what about the ones that are just in the average communities? Again, keep in mind our role in our urban areas where these things always happen at. Just because it's always a lack of resources. Everybody may not have access to KSI's information. And this is the interesting thing as well. I know you all want to laugh at this. We can talk about everything that everybody just said before me, right? But to a layman, this don't make sense. This is Chinese to a layman. When I start looking at House bills and legislative bills and things, draft bills of drafts, draft bills, it was all Chinese until I got familiar with it. So who do we really have from an advocacy perspective at a grassroots level that can explain, yeah, it's a cold orange outside, but sometimes you just gotta hear it from a different voice and say, guess what, it's dangerous, don't go out there, drink plenty of water, make sure the safety equipment is in place. So that's what we really deal with a lot of times. Yeah, it's so much easier to be in these type of think tank rooms because we're all speaking the same language and we all get it. But what about when we go out into the communities? These are the people that don't have a clue. And how do we deliver this information to them? That makes sense. So as an advocate, that's what we do. We deliver the message, and it's interesting because when we were at Falmouth, I was running around getting videos of everybody. I think me and you were talking about the wet bulb globe thermometer. But again, what does this look like in layman's terms? To the people that know you should have a wet bulb globe thermometer, all House Bill 836, we should have this equipment. What about the person who's never seen it? Yeah, we know it, but at the end of the day, I need to kind of, and that's the part I think the Jordan McNair Foundation brings to the advocacy aspect of it. We can go a lot of places and speak to a lot of people that may not get these resources in a sense, or may not understand it from our perspective. And then one more thing before I conclude is, even when we talk about student athletes, we talk over student athletes' heads whether we know it or not, because we can talk about, hey, this is what keeps them safe. But if you really ask, David and I were at Glenelg High School in Columbia recently, and they had a safety tent, had everything under it, so obviously you had ATs, right? But you talked to a couple of lacrosse players. They knew the value of the safety tent and the safety equipment. One guy said, I feel safer when I know I see that over there. You walk 15 feet, you talk to the field hockey young ladies, they ain't got a clue on what's out here or what it looks like. So again, I think from an education perspective, on the student athlete level, we got to constantly let them know this is what's going to keep you safe, and these are the things you need to be consistently identifying, in a sense. So that's my piece. Thanks for allowing me. Thanks for my 15 minutes. It's always good, but I think as a foundation, from where we were in 2018, it was very fresh for us. My son had just passed. I just knew that we needed to make a difference. And my thing was, if I don't know these things, how many other parents in America don't know these things? And really, like, everything that we've done has really been an organic, incremental process in regards to what really makes the difference. And to me, what we've gotten to, if you don't have an emergency action plan that's practiced, at the end of the day, all that other stuff means nothing, for sure. Yep. Thanks, everybody.